So, recently, I started watching some of the trial for the Amie Harwick murder.
Okay.
Do you know who she is?
I don't. I'm awful with names. I might have heard of the case, and I'm just drawing a blank with the name.
So, Amie Harwick was a sex therapist in LA. She was 38 years old at the time of her death. She was really on the road to, like, being extremely successful. She was doing great in LA. Like, really, really well for herself. Until she was tragically ended by her ex-boyfriend.
Oh, man. You know, that's something I forgot to say in the John Bonet stuff is statistically, over 70% of female victims of any age, it's most of the time, like over 70% of the time, it is an ex, a boyfriend, a close person that has some kind of like lover interest in them,
It's
stalker.
somebody you know.
Yes.
It is most likely always somebody you know.
And that's unfortunate that it was her ex like that. That sucks.
I know. And when you hear about, like, what happened leading up to this, she knew it was coming.
Ugh.
She totally knew. Gareth Pursehouse is 45, and he was absolutely obsessed with her. To the point it was terrifying for her. Like,
unhealthy stalker type
yes.
obsession. Yeah. Scary stuff.
To the point where he could not live his life without her. Now, he's on trial.
To the point of ending her?
Yeah.
Dude.
He's on trial right now. And he's alleged to have killed her back in 2020 on Valentine's Day. Oddly enough. Ironically enough. Jeez. Valentine's Day.
Is it murder one? Was this planned? Or was it a crime of passion?
It's murder one.
Okay. So he planned ahead of time?
He 100% planned this. He totally did.
If I can't have her, then no one can.
Exactly.
Got it.
And he is trying to claim in court right now that it was all like a mistake, that she accidentally fell from her window to her death by accident.
Oh. Accidentally
He
fell
wasn't trying
out of her
to hurt
window
her.
to her death.
Yeah. But obviously there's much more evidence. Like, all the other evidence totally contradicts that. Like, I don't think it's a question that he did it. I really don't. And the evidence that they have, I think, is incredibly strong. Not to mention the circumstances of what led up to it.
Sure.
And that she knew it was going to happen, probably. Like, literally to the point of telling her friends, if something happens to me, it was him.
I did hear that. Once you mentioned the sex therapist out of LA, I have heard about this. I just don't know a lot about it. I didn't know her name. But I did hear that her friends were told ahead of time.
Yeah,
like,
literally tracking her location on their phones.
Oh, man, dude. That's enough evidence as it is.
Yes, she literally set up tracking on her phone. I just heard one of, I don't remember his name, but one of their testimonies, the guy that she went to the red carpet event where Gareth was there, and he was doing photography at that event, and freaked out and literally was like, you ruined my life, like yelling this at a red carpet event.
Oh my gosh. Dude.
Insane. She talked to him for literally hours at this event to try to calm him down, because
why?
She's a therapist. I think she thought.
Oh no.
I think she thought that she could somehow like she apologized to him for like the hurt that she caused him, because he says
she
that
made a mistake there, unfortunately.
I think so too.
Yep.
She
that's giving him what he wants, the attention. Any attention in
know.
that situation is bad attention.
Well, because they hadn't seen each other in a very long time.
Oh,
and then he sees her, and he freaks. And clearly she saw, like, she was trying to have empathy and compassion for him, but when somebody is mentally unstable like that, that isn't going to help.
Get away.
Get away. They're obsessed with you. They want your attention. So, anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I want to explain who she was a little bit. So, people around her knew Amie as strikingly beautiful, always dressed very, very well, very fashionable. They say she was like a very adult Wednesday Addams, like a very grown-up, mature Wednesday Addams.
That sounds attractive.
Yeah, that she had a little, like, was high fashion with a little touch of goth. She made the rounds at burlesque clubs and go-go bars in LA, exhibitions, metal concerts, parties, just everywhere. Like she was a very social person, and had very good taste. But she was also known as like very brilliant and curious, which makes sense considering she's a sex therapist.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
She was fiercely self-sufficient and driven, paid her way through her master's degree at Pepperdine University and doctorate from the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality by holding up multiple side gigs at once, which include modeling, bartending, fire eating, go-go dancing. What?
Wow. That's amazing.
I know, isn't it?
Incredible.
Isn't it amazing?
And to lose someone like that to somebody and something so stupid.
I know. It really is disappointing. Yeah. So the friend that I was talking about that was tracking her location is Dr. Hernando Chavez. Or Chavez. Chavez, yeah, you're right. Chavez. I knew I said it wrong right away. Chavez. So his testimony is what I was listening to in the court hearing recently. And Chavez was like the witness at this this big gala red carpet event. He's the one who saw all of this. He was standing in line waiting to take pictures like on the red carpet with her, and like came over to check on her a few times. And he said, from the body language he could see, like, he was very agitated, and they were talking, and then once they were done, like, once he went over there and was like, okay, like, we need to go take our pictures, like, this is enough, and they go, he tries to, like, ask what happened. She doesn't want to talk about it until they literally leave, and they're in a parking garage, and, like, they go to the car, and then she just unloads it on him. And it's like, that's my ex. He was abusive. I had a restraining order on him. I think it was expired at that point because it had been that many years. And she explained, like, that he was hurt, that they she believed they were broken up.
That long?
She believed they were broken up and was sleeping with other people, and he did not think they were broken up, so he felt cheated on by her.
Okay.
And that he needed her, like, he wanted to be with her still, like, he was obsessed with her, and that she ruined his life and all this stuff. Well, literally the next day, Gareth gets her phone number somehow and starts texting her, asking to meet up, and she's like, sorry, no. Like, that was a lot. That was heavy. Like, I think we should just, like, not. In the nicest way possible. Ways. Yeah, I mean, she was still trying to be nice. Like, be like, maybe we could, like, talk or whatever, be nice when we see each other.
Number 2.
Yeah, I mean, she's trying to
just cut it.
I agree.
Period. If someone's
I
being
agree,
weird, especially in a weird safety, you're worried about your health and safety, dude, you cut everything. And you can do that in a nice way. You can say, look, we have too much of history for us to continue talking. I'm glad that we were able to touch base last night, but going forward, we can't have any more contact. And I like you as a person, appreciate you, but we got to go our separate ways. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it sounds like she was still trying to be nice, like I said,
Yeah,
and
do
just
the
like
therapist
be
thing.
like, yeah, like we can be okay, like when we see each other and everything, but no, essentially.
Yeah.
So another thing is she also was known as like Drew Carey, the host of The Price is Right's girlfriend. Like she dated
Okay.
him for a little bit.
Sure.
And they broke up in 2018. But they actually were just talking again, like starting to talk again right before her murder, which is like pretty sad. That they had a plan to get together and like go on like a little date, and clearly that got cut short.
Yeah, that's awful.
It is.
So, what happened next? Was there any other contact that happened?
So, I mean, not that I know of.
So, it went from that to...
So it went from a very violent, like volatile relationship, okay, where there was abuse and she got a restraining order and left him. She goes on to become incredibly successful and have a very happy life in LA, and then runs across him and he freaks out and then starts texting her and then literally starts like stalking her.
Okay, so next he started stalking her. So
Yeah.
finding her in person, trying to get, like, run into her in person, things like that.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if he tried to run into her or not. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm sure that if he has those types of behaviors, and it sounds like he is like classic textbook 101 stalker, then the next step after the texting and being turned down and someone putting their foot down would be to accidentally run into them in person or find out where they are, things like that. I'm just surprised after being apart for so long that it escalated like that. Literally picked up right where it left off.
Yeah.
That is wild. That is crazy.
Yeah, so this Rolling Stone article talks about their relationship, and that, like, when she got with him, that his unhealthy obsession with her is the reason she was in this, like, abusive, toxic relationship with him, because at the time she had abandonment issues. So that obsession made her feel safe. Like, this person will never leave me type thing.
Yeah, it feels good when someone is, like, totally obsessed with you, but as long as it's being done in a healthy way, that doesn't sound like it was in a healthy way, you know?
Yeah, and it sounds like he really was going after her in the beginning, like in the beginning of their relationship, the
Scary.
very beginning. It sounds like they met in 2010 is when it was at a go-go dancing gig. He like made many advances, like really wanted to be with her, and she liked it while everyone else was creeped out by it.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Got it.
a year and a half later, June 2011, is when she filed that restraining order against him and said that he had choked her, suffocated her, pushed her against walls, kicked her, dropped her on the ground with force, restrained her, slammed head into ground, and punched me with a closed fist.
Dude, oh my gosh.
Sounds awful.
He should have been in jail just for that alone.
Yeah.
I think people that do like spousal abuse, partner abuse, anything like that, where you have a relationship with somebody, even if you guys are friends, I guess it's not just a bar fight, and it is repetitive, like a repetitive fashion that you can prove some sort of 3 different occasion repetitive abuse. I think people like that should be getting charges to where they do time longer than a year. I don't feel like we are severe enough on those people.
I agree with you. I think domestic violence should be taken way more seriously than it is by the police. I understand that those situations when the cops show up and, you know, they're pointing fingers at each other like they did this, they did that.
That's different.
It is difficult to like figure out what happened.
That's why I said, because domestic abuse has this like, people think it's this, you know, unhealthy couple and they are taking advantage of each other, whatever, but it can even be friends. It can be normally the person that is repetitively aggressive and violent with somebody, whether you're in a relationship, a sexual relationship, personal relationship, family, friend, whatever, you guys are brothers, brother and sister, anything like that, like, that needs to be corrected. And the only way that I think it could be corrective is through being held accountable in our justice or prison system. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at the very least, make them take anger management courses, like court-ordered.
They do, but I don't think that's enough.
You don't think it's enough?
No way. That is too serious. The rate of people being put in the hospital or ended is too high to not be anything less than a year of jail time and then therapy to make sure they can stay out. I personally think that the court system should go so far to say that you're not allowed to be in a relationship, and if you get caught in a relationship, you go back to jail. I think that that's okay until they graduate therapy.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. That would make sense.
Because the issue isn't the person they're with. The issue is their own internal feelings. So they're the dangerous one. They got to work through whatever that is that's causing that to be able to be a normal functioning person in a normal healthy relationship. In my opinion. But
so that original restraining order was dismissed. And then in 2012, she was granted... It was dismissed for lack of prosecution, which sometimes means the petitioner chose not to follow up. Okay. So it sounds like she was granted it, and then it was dismissed like a while after because she didn't follow up with it.
Okay. So like enough time had passed where she's like, I haven't seen this guy, whatever.
Well, no, it sounds like they're still in a relationship because then in 2012, a year later, she alleged that he broke into her apartment multiple times, smashed picture frames.
Dude, what?
Yeah, I don't know. Alleging he had pulled her out. Okay, so she was granted another. Alleging he had pulled her out of a car, giving her a bloody nose, and left her on the freeway. He broke into her apartment, smashed picture frames, texting her the chilling rejoinder that things will get worse. She renewed the restraining order against Purse House by California law. They can't exceed 5 years because she was terrified to appear in court again with him, be near him. So... clearly he was incredibly abusive, obsessive, and...
I am blown away that she talked to him for hours at that red carpet, dude.
I am too, especially after getting away from it.
Police right away. The police. Because that's behavior proving he's not over it.
Yeah, and she, for years after that, she would find posts about her on these, like, gossip websites that were, like, super horrible. Like, incredibly cruel. She was afraid somebody would break in and do something to her cat. So, I mean, she was living fearful, okay, of this guy, and it sounds like he kept popping up for years. Like, literally would just keep popping up in some shape or form. Whether that was gossiping about her and saying mean things on the internet, or breaking into her apartment.
Dangerous guy. Clearly, obviously, because he now did what he did. This sounds horrible. For anyone out there, I'm going to put a number up for abuse. You know, what are those lines called? The help lines for like people in battered relationships or whatever.
Yeah, and it's like a domestic abuse hotline.
Yeah, I guess it is a domestic violence hotline. But if you yourself or you know anyone in a situation where there are ever hands placed on anybody, man, I just suggest you get out. They have something they got to work through, and there is no fix. There never is. Ever, 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 ever. Never, ever.
I second that.
This is scary. This should be an example why it's so important.
Yeah, and you know what's incredible about her is she really like was invested in helping out sex workers specifically, and she did a lot for them, and I think she was an incredibly good person, like down to her core, like really cared about people.
Yeah.
And I think that's why she sat there and talked to him at that red carpet event and tried to make it better. Like, even though she was past it and it had been years, it sounded like, at least that's the impression I have. I think she went into that empathy, compassion, and Chavez says that she like went into therapist mode and was trying to help him. And I think it was the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm. I do. I think it was the wrong move. I don't think that there should have been any response. She should have just 100% ignored him. The fact that any attention was given to him, whether it's good attention, bad attention, or other, I don't think he's the type of person that could tell the difference between good attention or bad attention. I think any attention was a mistake. She should have just called the police and been like, hey, this guy is threatening me, verbally threatening me, and embarrassing me. And, you know, given the whole rundown, you're at a red carpet event, man, and got that dang thing reinstated because of that.
Yeah, so the red carpet event I was telling you about was January 17th, 2020. So her murder was Valentine's Day, February 14th. So it was literally a month later, a little bit less.
If it's Valentine's Day, I feel like that's premeditated.
Duh. I mean, that's, yeah, for sure. So it was the same year, a month before, she was set to appear on a panel about mental health and counseling at XBiz, an adult industry business conference and award show. That was the red carpet event that she saw him at. Her appearance was last minute, and she gladly stepped in, and when she was about to rock the red carpet with her friend Chavez is when when she saw him. She hoped that she could, like, from what I heard Chavez saying in the hearing, was in his testimony, was that she hoped, like, she could just, like, move along and avoid it. But apparently Pursehouse just got super agitated. And I feel like that's not clear. Like, was he just looking at her?
For sure.
So
Yeah.
where they weren't speaking or anything. He's just he sees her, and the more he watches her, the more angry he gets, and then he just screams over the crowd, "You ruined my life!" Like,
Yeah.
it's okay.
That
so
sounds embarrassing and psychotic
super
and crazy.
embarrassing. So he yells, "You're a hypocrite! You broke my heart!" And he also, like, said stuff like, "You ruined my life, you be," and stuff like that. So then she went into therapist mode. They talked, as I said before, and then after is when they made that whole plan to, like, she was going to get a taser, like, you know, she was going to do, like, her friend Chavez was going to have her location. Like, they were coming up with all these plans for her to stay safe. And then we go to the day of the murder, which was Valentine's Day 2020. And it sounds like she started off that day with a sunrise hike, a Valentine's Day breakfast with her friend Cleopatra at Beechwood Cafe, and then a night out at burlesque shows at Globe Theater with other friends. So she was, like, it was like a whole thing with, it says Miss Tosh. It was celebrating the holiday. It was like a Valentine's Day burlesque show, okay?
Sure.
So, moving on, She, then around 10 p.m., I'm trying to see. Okay, so it was after midnight. So after midnight is when she finally goes home. It says about 1:02 a.m. She pulls into the driveway. She texts her friend, and then she enters the home. She was viciously attacked as she made it up to the 3rd floor of her bedroom. So somebody was sitting there waiting. Now, there was a roommate downstairs, and I heard his testimony too. So I think it was about an hour prior to when she got home. He said he heard a crash, like something falling and breaking, but he was asleep. Like, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. He wasn't going out. He was sleeping. He said he was really tired that night. He was asleep. He hears this crash, and he I don't know, he doesn't think much of it.
Semi-wake up, like...
Yeah, and she has a cat, so, like, it could be the cat. And he goes back to sleep.
Sure.
Until he hears her screaming, and he said what sounded like bodies hitting the floor. He said it sounded like two people, like it sounded like bodies slamming the floor. And he couldn't find his phone, so he hoped that when he yelled up the stairs to leave her alone, because that's literally what he said, is leave her alone, that would scare off the attacker, but it didn't. So then he ran outside, and he jumped over a fence to knock on the neighbor's door and call 911. Nobody answered the door, though, so he starts running door to door until he literally spots somebody on the street with a cell phone and tells them to call 911.
Oh my gosh, dude.
So
that's going to haunt him forever.
I know. So during this time... Did
he take his phone? He couldn't find his phone?
He couldn't find his phone.
Oh, man. I wonder if he took it. Moved it.
I don't know. I do not know. So, police, when they arrive, find Annie 20 feet beneath her bedroom balcony. She had a balcony that, like, you know, like those French doors, like with a balcony, and she was 20 feet below. She had deep marks on her neck. She had been strangled. She had very bad damage. I think they said to her liver. Okay. Which I don't know if that was from the fall. Like, I haven't quite figured that out.
Be punching too.
Yeah. So apparently she was attacked, beaten, strangled, and then thrown out of the window. Like, they believe she was literally picked up and dropped. And they find a syringe. Terrifying. A syringe in her bedroom filled with a brown liquid. And at first they thought it was heroin, so they go test it. It's not. It is a lethal dose of nicotine.
What? Oh, man.
Think about the planning.
Yeah.
A lethal dose of nicotine.
He probably didn't expect her to fight like she did, and it changed.
Well, what they're alleging in the trial is that because they have, so a neighbor had just installed cameras, like Ring cameras, a week before. Mm-hmm. And I watched it in the trial, they have him coming up, covering the camera for like a few seconds to make it turn off, and then going, like, he's like, I think it's an alley is I think what it is, and then he's literally breaking into her house, like he's going in there, so that's their proof he was there and that he was breaking into the house.
Dude,
he goes in there,
anyone but him,
and he waits there for like an hour with this syringe, and what they thought was he was gonna like inject her with that, obviously. And the police start inquiring, obviously, like after they find her, like who could have done this. Literally everyone's like him.
Yeah.
It was him.
Sure.
So, it says her friend Koshland said that, you know, about the abuse and everything. The police start investigating him, And eventually he's arrested. It says April 16th is
Okay.
when, oh wait,
Yeah,
that's when
they
he
had to
pled
build
not
the
guilty.
case.
That's when it, okay, so wait. So February 15th, the next day is, I don't know why it doesn't say arrested. It said he pled not guilty April.
Okay.
I don't know why it doesn't have his arrest date. I don't remember that.
If everyone knows it's him and knows the background of it, the police probably picked him up pretty quick.
Yeah,
Yep.
they probably just had to prove it and stuff. I'm curious. The only thing I don't know that I haven't learned is, like, do they have any evidence of what he did after the murder? Because I haven't seen any evidence for that yet. Like, what they think he did after. How did he flee? Where did he go? Is there Ring camera footage of him fleeing? I haven't seen that yet. But I find it really interesting that he chose nicotine.
I mean, I think it's a simple decision, and it could be just a Google search away, and it's probably easy to do too. All you gotta do is buy really high nic salt, whatever, and you know what I mean. I don't know if he's smart enough to look into the difference of how your body consumes intramuscular versus intravenous and what all that plan was, but like, yeah. It's not something you hear common, but
No.
neither is needle murder.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So what they think happened is he had every intention, obviously, of waiting there, injecting her with that. But they think he didn't know the roommate was there. And when they heard him, when Gareth heard him yelling up the stairs, he freaked and threw her off the balcony and ran. And when they searched his apartment, they found the same exact needle. And his apartment is the same exact, like, identical brand, everything. Gauge.
God, it's just so crazy. So, there's a lot of killers out there that I can put myself in their head a little bit to understand the logic behind why they're making a decision they're making, and understanding that, you know, while they're looking at people as objects, so as long as I put myself in their head and pretend whatever I'm thinking of is, like, you know, an object or whatever, like, it makes sense. 1 + 1 = 2 and things like that. When I look at abusers and stalkers in this way, I have such a hard time understanding. I just don't get it. I just don't understand that need to control somebody in that way, that need that you can't live without them. If you can't have them, no one else can. Like, the willingness to risk your entire life to control somebody else, when, like, I just don't understand how you could have that hunger to control someone else when you're not in control of yourself. Clearly, you do not have control of yourself if you're making decisions that could put you away for your entire life in prison, all because you're trying to control someone else. Like, it just goes back to that, you know, figure yourself out before you can figure somebody else out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that go into that. People who want to control people like that clearly have no self-worth or confidence. I see him as pathetic. Literally,
for sure.
Weak,
Yes.
Coward, pathetic scum.
Yeah. No, he is
He
all
is
of those things.
Literally a giant baby.
Yeah, no, he is all those things. I think where I was going with it is just trying to understand his psyche, how someone can get to that point. Because there's a lot of, like, psychological assessments out there with serial killers where it makes sense. Like, you know, an abusive, horrible, manipulative mother makes you hate women. Like,
Well, it's like an
all
addiction.
those lines make sense how they get to that end result. I can't understand this end result. I just don't get it. It's got to be self-hate, like you said, and maybe because they subconsciously know they're not in control of themselves and their feelings and caring about themselves, that if they force it on somebody else, maybe they will feel like they do, I don't know. I don't know. But you're right. Yeah, he's a piece of trash. He's horrible. I can't believe that they went all those years in between their relationship and this situation, and it picked up again like that. There was literally no ramp up. It's like he was just a ticking time bomb waiting to go. And that's why I feel like people like this should be getting time. Like a year at least. For all those things she listed.
I know.
During the relationship. How is he not behind bars, dude? Maybe she was partially at fault because she wasn't calling the police every time it happened. I don't know. I don't know.
I think the more interesting question here is what causes an obsession to that extent in a person's brain? Because
I
clearly,
obsessions.
okay, yes, you understand how obsession feels. I think a lot of people do. Most people understand what it's like to be obsessed with something.
Yeah.
But the thing is here is he was so obsessed with her that he felt he could not live without her. He could not live seeing her go about her day being happy, sleeping with other people, other men being able to enjoy her, and not him.
Do you think it's that deep? I don't know if it's that deep.
Yes, it absolutely was that deep. His whole thing was the fact that they were together and she was sleeping with other people, and he did it on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, but obsessions, in my opinion, are never that thought out, and that's what makes obsession. So I have ADHD, for those of you that don't know.
All you're doing is thinking.
No, what? No. The obsession is when I'm able to release and only think about one single thing and obsess over every detail of that, and my focus is so pinpointed and so on that I'm not like considering pros and cons, and I think there could have been no other guys and he still would have done this. I don't think those details of, I can't see her with somebody else, no.
Okay, remove that then. But he was clearly upset she was with other people.
Yeah, when they broke up,
okay,
yes.
He is obsessing over her and the fact that he cannot have her.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like all he's doing is thinking about her and the fact that he cannot have her and he is obsessed with her. Yeah. And he wants to have her and he cannot.
Or control her, yeah.
Yeah, but he's not thinking I want to control her.
No.
People don't actively think that.
That's why I'm saying is I don't think he's thinking any of those things. I think that it's like automatic, on autopilot, a prisoner to your own emotional obsessions. I don't think there was any intentional thoughts to this.
Oh, I definitely think so.
Trauma, when you have horrible trauma, you're a prisoner to your own emotions. And I think that he didn't understand or try and think, oh, do I feel this way because she's with guys? Do this? No, I think he's just a sick, disgusting individual that had some kind of trauma in his life and feels like he needs her approval and her to be an okay person in his own head. And he's just floating through this horrible situation.
I think at some points he probably floated through it. But at other points, I do not think he was floating through it. And I don't think he was asking himself why he feels this way. I think he was literally obsessing, thinking, oh my, like, I want her so bad. Like, what a bee. She has betrayed me. She's left me. Like, 100%. I didn't want to, like, say it because it's, like, kind of weird to say it, but I've totally had obsessions over people before, like, when I was a teenager and stuff.
I think we all have.
And I totally was thinking stuff like that.
Yeah, but you're a woman. Women and men think differently in the way that they handle problems and work through problems and things like that. The one reason why I feel like what I'm saying is that
how can you float through an obsession?
I do it every day. That's what I enjoy about it. Is that I am not thinking about every single detail, trying to look at the situation from a 3D model. I am hyper obsessing on one single thing, and ignoring everything else around me other than that one single thing and just floating through it. It's autopilot, complete and total autopilot. But hold on.
Okay.
Let me get this out. The reason why I think that he was doing that in that way, because as long as he didn't see her, he was content. The second he saw her, that was that uncontrollable obsession again, because if it wasn't that way, then he would have already done this. He did it because he saw her again and felt that same feeling and went on autopilot and couldn't control himself. So if they never would have saw each other, this never would have happened.
Yeah, but
unfortunately.
I'm just talking about obsessive thoughts. It's not like his head was empty. Like, he was having obsessive thoughts. Like,
yeah.
And when you have thoughts, there's words.
Maybe. I don't know. It's a very weird thing to try and explain. But I don't think of... for me, my obsessions are my autopilot.
Okay, that's not normal.
Maybe it's not normal. I don't know. All I have is my personal experience.
I feel like that's not normal.
Maybe. I don't know. But I'm a guy. I got ADHD. I love having obsessions into things, and I just do it in a very healthy way and let go and go through it. And I think that these types of obsessions are in a very similar way, except they are uncontrolled. They don't have the skills. They don't have control over themselves to be able to control it. And when he gets these thoughts in his head where a normal person is like, ugh, disgusted by that thought. I can't believe I thought about that. You push it away, and move on. He isn't able to do that. Yeah. He's not able to push that thought away. It consumes him. Yeah,
absolutely. But I want to know what you guys think about obsession and what causes it. Like, what is it genetic? Is it a chemical imbalance? Like, are some people more predisposed to it? Like, because I feel like everybody's had an obsession with something.
Yeah, for sure.
But like to this extent, like, I want to know what causes that in a brain. Like, is there certain kinds of trauma that lead to obsession more? But most importantly, I want to know what obsession feels like to you. Yeah. Is it like Brendan is saying, where it's like almost like it's like autopilot, like you're not really thinking obsessive thoughts, like, or is it like I'm saying, where when I'm obsessed with something, I'm totally thinking like these obsessive thoughts, and it's words. Mm-hmm. It's not just like, I don't know, the way you're explaining doesn't even make sense to me.
So, okay, here's a good example of my obsession. Just imagine taking a toilet paper roll and looking through it, and anything that you see in that is the only thing you're thinking about, and you are allowed to ignore everything else in the world around that, okay? Now...
that's obsession.
Yeah, but I can do that on autopilot, where I'm not having intentional thoughts about it. I just go.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know how else to explain it.
I have to actively be thinking of it.
Like, me obsessing over things and, like, shutting everything else out, and just, like, total and complete obsession on video games, on projects, on whatever I'm doing, until it is perfect, is me, like, calming myself. It's calming. I love obsessing.
Yeah, but like video games are like kind of mindless. Like, of course you're not thinking like, oh, I got to do this in the game. Like, you're playing the game, you're enjoying yourself, you're enjoying the mindlessness of it. So I feel like that's different than being obsessed with a person that you can't have. Like, I feel like there has to be thoughts there. He literally premeditated her murder.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, he's clearly thinking thoughts. And it's not just this. I don't feel like it can be autopilot.
Maybe I'm just a type of person where I've never been in a situation where I've felt that way, so I just don't have a good understanding of it. I think that's totally possible. But if you want to share what you obsess about. I think everyone has obsessions, for sure.
I obsess about one type of food for months, and then I'll hate that food, and then obsess about a different type of food.
Yeah. I can literally obsess about anything.
So can I.
Literally everything. But
So
I choose not to, and I set time limits for myself on things and stuff. Otherwise, I will ignore all the important stuff in my life and only care about that.
But I want to go back to Amie Harwick. What happened to her is, like, she was literally a beacon for survivors.
Yeah.
Like, she was doing so much good for sex workers, survivors of domestic violence. Like, she was actively working in these communities for these organizations, being a therapist that saw them and tried to help people through it personally. Like, doing so much.
Yeah.
Seriously, so much. And I think genuinely was an amazing person. Yeah. And it's really unfortunate that she met this guy when she was traumatized and not healthy, and it all these years later led to him murdering her.
Yep.
Like, I really feel so bad for her family and her friends, and I'm going to be following this trial because I want to see him get convicted to prison for the rest of his life and look like an idiot up there trying to say that it was an accident.
The world lost a really good person and left with a really crappy one. So hopefully the rest of his life is behind bars.
Yeah, and I want justice for her, and I'll be following it, and any updates that seem relevant, we'll update you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.